Hey guys, welcome back to Mr. Donnell's Social 9 podcast. We are now moving on to Chapter 5, Episode 1, Immigration in Canada. Pretty big chapter, pretty interesting chapter. Reading some interesting stories about people and families that have left their countries to move to Canada for varying reasons, and we'll talk about some of those reasons as well as we go along. And it's too bad that we're not in class for this, because it would have been great to hear some of the immigration stories from our own classmates, because I'm sure they have some interesting stories. So, starting off, how well do Canada's immigration laws and policies respond to immigration issues? In this chapter, we'll have a little bit of debates and talk about pros and cons of immigration, because there's a lot of pros, a lot of biased opinions come up when we talk about immigration, and hopefully we can discuss some of those issues as we have in our live discussion classes as well. The first assignment, again, just quickly, is the Chapter 5 vocabulary. Not too big of one for this assignment. Okay. So the introduction I'm on, if you're following along in the textbooks, on page 162. Take an informal survey of how many of your friends have ancestors from other countries. The families of many Canadians originated in other parts of the world and immigrated to Canada. How does Canada benefit from new immigration? How does the government respond to emerging issues related to immigration today? This chapter explores Canada's immigration laws and policies. They say who can come to Canada from other countries to work and live. Immigration is an important part of Canada's legislative framework, because it affects the quality of life of Canadians and of people who seek to build a home in Canada. People want to come to Canada for many reasons. Quality of life in Canada pulls many people. I want you to think about that term, pulls. Quality of life in Canada pulls many people here. Canada also offers shelter to refugees who are pushed out of their home countries by war and other circumstances. So in this chapter, I want you to think of pull factors. Pull factors meaning what in Canada draws people here, versus push factors. That's things happening in other countries that are pushing people out. Usually a combination of both. Immigration poses opportunities and challenges for citizenship, for building a society in which all Canadians, existing and new, belong. As we read throughout this chapter, you will assess how effectively Canada's immigration laws and policies meets the needs of all Canadians. Think about how the government responds to emerging issues that arise from immigration. So, to start off, we've got our very basic definition. Immigration, the process of people establishing homes and often citizenship in a country that is not their native country. So immigration is any other country. So no, this is not, I always get this question, if you're from a different province in Canada, it is not immigration. You're just moving. Different country coming to Canada. So the first one here was, can anyone think of an example of immigration from your family to Fox Creek? We have a lot. There are some important questions about immigration and how it affects Canadians. One, how does Canada benefit from new immigration? And two, how does Canada respond to emerging issues related to immigration today? So there I want you to think about war. What's our responsibility when it comes to refugees? And things like that. Canada's immigration laws and policies. Immigration is an important part of Canada's legislative framework, like I've already said, because it affects the quality of life of Canadians who are already here and of the people who seek to build a home in Canada. Again, repeating myself, but many reasons why people come to Canada, but we're talking about pull versus push factors. Okay? Pull factors, what in Canada draws people here, versus push factors, what's pushing them out of their country that they're already from. Main focus questions for this chapter. What criteria does Canada use when accepting immigrants and refugees? So, again, if you can answer these three questions by the end of the chapter, you're doing pretty good. So Canada has a point system that we'll go over. 2, how do the individual and collective rights of Canadians influence immigration laws and policies? So how do our rights of the people that are already here impact our immigration laws? And 3, how do provinces influence immigration laws and policies? So we'll talk about how immigration is a federal issue, which means Canadian issue, but provinces do have a say, almost like a nomination program is what it's actually called, with what kind of immigrants they would like to move to their particular province. So just a quick little history lesson here about immigration in the past. Canada's government used posters such as these in the late 1800s to recruit immigrants. It wanted to recruit immigrants to fulfill the objectives of the national policy, to promote Canadian industry, finish the national railway, and settle the West. The national policy was formulated by John A. Macdonald's Conservative government in 1873. To recruit immigrants, the government targeted the U.S., Britain, and many parts of Europe, but not countries with French-speaking populations such as France, Belgium, and Switzerland. So, these posters from the 1800s, we all really only wanted people from the U.S., Britain, and many parts of Europe. So you're thinking white English-speaking people right now. What challenges and opportunities does immigration create for Canada today? Canada accepts more immigrants when it faces labor shortages, including immigrants with specific skills to fill demands for workers in particular jobs. A lot of this, I really want you to try to think common sense here. Labor shortage means we have too many jobs available and not enough people to fill those jobs. Okay, so when that happens, immigration increases. We can't find people that are actually already in the country, so we need to go out and find more people from other places. Okay, and especially when it comes to specific skills that immigrants may have. Really key point with this chapter is separating the difference between refugees and immigrants. So immigrants are people that are choosing to come to Canada, okay, looking probably to permanently move here. Refugees are people fleeing their country due to many possible reasons, but you're thinking about war here, you're thinking about natural disasters, like when you hear about tsunamis, tornadoes, hurricanes, stuff like that. Those are refugees, which means they're coming here for a not permanent time because they need help, with the goal of eventually going back. So the picture you're looking at now is a refugee camp in North Darfur, Sudan. Conflict in Sudan made the people in the camp flee their homes. Canada has obligations to shelter people who need to escape war and other dangers. Obligations meaning have to, because this comes down to an agreement that we have with the United Nations. Just a little example here. His name is Michel Jean. This is Michel Jean, francophone, originally from Haiti, appointed Governor General of Canada in 2005. Immigration can affect the identity of people who come to Canada and of people who already live here, including groups in Canada with collective rights. Immigration creates a mix of cultures where peoples need to learn each other's beliefs, values, and worldviews. All right, your first assignment, just a paragraph, and I'm going to try something new in the Google Classroom here, so we'll see if it works. But your question really is your own opinion. What opportunities, so 2 parts to the question, what opportunities, part 1, does immigration create for people in Canada? What challenges does immigration create for people in Canada? So here I really want you to think about, you're almost making like a pro-con list. Okay, so this would have been a great debate to have in class, but how does immigration help Canada and the people already in Canada, and how might it make it cause challenges for people that are already in Canada? That's Critical Thinking 5.1, Chapter 5, Number 1. So what sort of criteria we're going to look through here is what criteria does Canada use when accepting immigrants and refugees? So in this chapter, we're going to talk about different types of immigration legislation related to immigration and refugees. The big one here is Canada's point system and criteria used when accepting immigrants and refugees. It's too bad we would have actually, if we were in class, we've actually done the points test to see if anyone would have got in. What are the advantages and disadvantages of Canada's point system? and then issues related to immigration legislation. So the big one here in this section is talking about Canada's point system. And then you got your second critical thinking here. Again, just a little paragraph. A little bit of your opinion here, but you could look stuff up. You're thinking about pull and push factors here. What are some reasons that people may want to immigrate to Canada? Coming to Canada, or leaving a negative situation. So what are some pull factors that Canada has, and what might possibly be some push factors that would force people to want to leave their country? Not refugees. So it's not necessarily war per se. You could put that if you want, but other reasons they might push them out of their country. What is the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act? The Immigration and Refugee Protection Act dates from 2002. It establishes categories for who can come to Canada from other countries to make permanent homes here. So not just anybody can come. At the bottom here, looking at the little map, this is from 2006, so a while ago here, but just different places where refugees have come from in the past. Almost all of those, actually all of those, have war, has to do with war. So we're going to get more in detail on this later on in future episodes, but you're looking at different immigration categories. So economic immigrants, that's the big red circle, 55%, which is skilled workers and business people. So that's people that are coming here to do a job that they're good at, that we need. That's the biggest chunk of the circle there. 28% is family class immigrants. So spouses, partners, children, parents, and grandparents of people living in Canada. So that means they already have family here. Okay, we were going to talk about how usually, talk about the Filipinos in our community, usually the father will come here first, work, and then their family will come over. So that person's coming over as an economic immigrant, and then their family would be coming over later. Refugees, so people who are escaping persecution, torture, or cruel and unusual punishment. And then another 4% there is people accepted as immigrants for humanitarian or compassionate reasons. And I know, sorry, this is on like a little weird angle here, but just some of the objectives of our Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. Pursue social, cultural, and economic benefits for all Canadians. Respect the bilingual and multicultural character of Canada. Support the development of minority official language communities in Canada. So this is kind of going back to previous chapters here. We're looking at trying to find French-speaking immigrants in that point. Share the benefits of immigration and support a prosperous economy across all regions of Canada. We're failing miserably when it comes to that point because, as you'll see later, almost all immigrants go to 3 places in Canada. Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. So one of the goals is to share the benefit of immigration across all Canada. Not working too well. Next goal, reunite families in Canada and promote the successful integration of immigrants into Canadian society, recognizing that integration involves mutual obligations for new immigrants and Canadian society. So remember, it says integrate, not assimilate, like we talked about before. Integrate. So become part of Canadian society, but you can obviously keep everything you have about your previous society as well. And assignment 3. What are the benefits of immigrants to the rest of Canada? So it says read over the following article. You don't have to underline or highlight key points unless you want to. And it says answer the question on the left and right side of the article. So what issues affecting immigration are illustrated in the plan? So what are some problems? And then the last one there is in what ways did the plan attempt to meet the needs of Canadians? So you got 2 points there, a little paragraph, sentence or two for each one. And that's it for that one. So you're going to read your own there. I can read it for you right now, actually. Immigration has largely defined what Canada is today and has been a sustaining feature of Canada's history. Waves of immigration have built and transformed the population while making significant contributions to the development of our economy, our society, and our culture. Immigration will continue to play a key role in building the Canada of tomorrow and in supporting our economic growth. Like many other industrialized countries, Canada is facing significant demographic changes. According to Statistics Canada, sometime between 2025 and 2030, the number of births to Canadian parents will equal the number of deaths. If Canada's population is to continue to grow, immigration will be the source of this growth, unless birth and death rates change. These demographic factors are also slowing Canada's labor force growth. Labor force growth is key to ensuring economic growth. Sometime between 2011 and 2016, it's already happened, the number of Canadians entering the labor force will equal the number of people retiring. Without immigration, Canada's labor force will shrink. So when you think here, a lot of people think, well, what's the problem? That means there's just more jobs available. True, but only if people have the skills to do those jobs. If Alberta is in demand for people with certain skill sets, whatever you want to say, doctors, construction workers, you name it, electricians, plumbers. If we have a shortage, we just can't go out and pick anyone to do that job. If there's no one available to do it that's already in Canada or willing to move there or willing to do it, that's where immigration comes in. What is a law versus a policy? Governments create laws and they also create policies. A law describes principles or conditions that must be followed. A policy describes objectives of the government within the law. Example, immigration. It's a little confusing, but you'll understand eventually. Immigration law says who is allowed into Canada. Period. Immigration policy sets the procedures for evaluating immigrants and says how many people are allowed into Canada from year to year. There's another example on page 131. But again, law, who is allowed into Canada, period. Policies can change. How are we evaluating how the immigrants are going to get in and how many are we going to let in? Okay, that is it for Chapter 5, Episode 1. I'll talk to you guys in our live class next time. Next episode, we'll be talking about the immigration point system and the test that immigrants have to take when they're trying to get in. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.